So my name is Cathy. I work for the South African Graduate Employers Association of South Africa, and we have the absolute privilege of working, well, we've been in the market for about 15 years now, our 15th anniversary, and we have the absolute privilege of working with some of the leading organizations in South Africa who have an interest in building young talent for their organizations. So they either run large graduate or bursary programs, or they have some kind of interest in building young talent for the future. So that's our pride and joy, is our partners that we work with. PwC will be speaking just now, and they were part of our founding members 15 years ago. We do three things really. One is around helping our members make informed decisions. And those informed decisions around giving them the insights and being their thinking partner around how we think through what the future holds for young talent. And two key pieces of insights that we do every year are our employer benchmark and our candidate insights. The employer benchmark was completed in June this year, and essentially what we do is track a whole lot of information for our members. So the first thing that we track is demand and supply for graduates. So we're very conscious and aware of all the graduates coming out of the system every year, by race, by gender, by degree, by everything. We know all that data, but essentially what we're doing here is trying to understand the demand for young talent in business. So we've got a steady 5.3% growth. We've been tracking this, as I said, for 15 years. We have, in the last 15 years, never had a drop in demand, which is fantastic news. And then what we do is we track industries as well. So what's happening in one industry, what's happening in other industries in terms of demand. So we look at sector and we look at skill as well. The third thing is, as you see, is the example of engineering and manufacturing. Massive increases in that demand, and then talking about individual sectors as well. The other thing that we do is track demand on medians in terms of how many graduates are typically joining companies. So we have some companies who are bringing in over 500 graduates a year, but we have some companies bringing in 2 or 3. So we tend to work on medians so we don't get skewed in those results. Very importantly, what graduates are earning. So whilst you see a medium starting salary of around 210,000 for this year, you also can't get caught up with that, because the minute that you start looking at some of the engineering roles, some of the investment banking roles, some of the legal roles, you're looking at in excess of 350,000. Our members are spending about 30 million combined at the moment just on attraction. So this is the employer value proposition, or what we call the development value proposition, that are offered to young graduates in the market. So it's an incredibly expensive process. And this is one of the reasons why we partner with them, because you want to make informed decisions around how and where you spend your money. We track social media, of course, you have to. And our members typically are using both LinkedIn and Facebook primarily as the go-to tool to talk to students. We also then track the actual recruitment process. So at the moment, the median number of applications is around 92. So 92 CVs on a desk for every job that's available in South Africa. And that has jumped significantly this year from 59. So it's quite a big jump. But we've also seen quite a significant jump in graduate output in the last 2 or 3 years. 78% of employers are meeting their equity target. It is a real challenge in some areas, particularly STEM. And hence you'll see the last comment, gender diversity has become the thing that companies are looking at the moment. Because, whilst equity is obviously important, but the gender balance is also important, coupled with equity. So that's the key highlights from our employer survey. The other thing that we do, and this is for me, one of the richest pieces of data that I really enjoy, perhaps because I'm as nosy as hell, but it certainly gives you insight as to what graduates are doing. So what we do is we speak to about 2,000 graduates every year to get a sense of how and when and what they are pursuing in terms of the market. And here's some of the data. 62% of candidates were influenced by the reputation of the university when deciding when to study. You can get a copy of this on our website, by the way, if you're interested. So there's a very much a reputational decision-making process, not only to where you study, but where you actually end up working as well. 63% of candidates received some financial support from their families, but we also we track NSFAS spend, we track bursary, scholarship, all that sort of thing, so we have a good sense of how students are actually affording their time at university. And as I always say to people, you know, if you're a parent and have put a child through university, you know that, you know, the minute you send your child out of your own city to study, you're in for a $750,000 investment. So it's a big one. It really is a big one. And most of us have 2 children, so, you know, times 2, and probably 3 years apart. So it's quite a killer. That's why we all work, right? 2/3 have studied towards a commerce degree, so there's a big interest in commerce, and 1/5 studying engineering. This group of candidates, and by the way, let me just tell you a little bit about this group, this 2,000. What we did was talk to people who've been successful, because we want to understand what success looks like and what did they do to get to that success. So that's why we're tracking this small group of students. This group of students are not taking the spray and pray approach. Have you heard of spray and pray? It's when you send your CV everywhere and you hope to God somebody's going to phone you. These students are taking a very niched, targeted approach. So they're going with 5 to 6 applications. And guess what? They're being very successful with it as well. 53% of candidates are receiving 2 or more offers, which is unbelievable in this economy. It really is. So the good students are really reaping the reward of the situation. 77% of candidates are using LinkedIn. So not only do we understand what employers are doing, we're actually watching and monitoring what students are doing as well. And then how they use LinkedIn and how they use Facebook, how they use Insta and Snapchat and even all of them. So the top 4 factors when considering when to apply to an employer and how they make the decision around joining has very much to do with their learning experience. So when they start off in a graduate position, they are saying, how can you continue to keep me relevant? So learning and development, training and development, and that's why in graduate recruitment, we tend to use the word DVP as opposed to EVP, because students are all interested in the development value proposition that the company is going to be offering. The reputation of the company, we've seen that at, you know, before university and at the end of the university, and then long-term career prospects and job security. I want to say something about job security. One of the sad things that we do have happening in South Africa at the moment is that when you look at how many jobs are offered and what % are permanent versus contract, our permanent positions for entry-level graduates are sitting at about 40%. I thought that was particularly low. So what I did was I reached out to my colleagues in the UK and in Australia, and that figure in Australia is 85% of jobs are permanent. In the UK, it's 72%. So we are way below. Now, what is it? Is it our economy that nobody knows what's going to happen next year? Is it, you know, is it that, you know, we just want to be a training place and not a longer commitment? So on the one hand, employers are saying, you know, these damn young graduates, they've got no long-term commitment. But on the other hand, we're not offering anything. And you know, those kinds of things are top of mind. And I know from being a mom and having a university child who comes out, you can't buy a car, you can't rent a flat, you can do nothing with a contract position. So mom has to sign for everything, right? And that's not ideal. So it's a situation that we are monitoring very tightly and are concerned about in South Africa. So job security, because of our situation, is very important in South Africa. I can't even begin to talk about, you know, the obligations of black tax and all those other things that come to mind with young graduates who particularly are first in family, exiting university and having to take on family responsibility. The top sources of information about employers, the employer website. That's the first place the student goes to when they're interested. So companies who have invested and put enough effort into the employer website will reap the rewards. The challenge, though, is if your brand isn't well known, you have to tell someone to go to your website. And that's often the step that employers often miss. The second part is people in industry. And then, of course, I think there are 97 university career fairs this year. 97 of them. There's a huge amount of these career fairs. 42% started to research employers in their final year. That means, though, that 60% had already made a decision as to where they're going to work before their final year. So you can see what the good students are doing. They're starting from year one. And it was really interesting. I was telling Sue, last week I was at Free State University, and we did lectures to the first-year students. We did 8,200 students in 2 days on the basics of career management at first year. It's an incredible experience. One of my team members said to me, you know, geez, you can draw a crowd, Kath. I said, no, it's compulsory, actually. Anyway, so an interesting stat to look at. 1 in 6 candidates accepted a job offer that they later reneged on. This is, again, a South African thing. It's starting to emerge in the US and the UK. But what happens is some companies will try and offer early to secure people, but then the students find out that actually they're offering a poorer salary, a poorer opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. So we're seeing reneging continue in South Africa. 56% were successful in securing employment in their first choice of employer. So if you talk to them about what is your top 3 employers, it's really, really interesting because these students are getting to the very best that they want to work for. 58% indicated the most significant useful source of support in their jobs was actually their line manager. And we all know the story about, you know, you join a company and you leave because of your manager, right? And they rate the recruitment processes. So in South Africa, they think Deloitte, F&B, and PwC have a great recruitment process, despite who they work for, by the way. 2/5 of candidates expect to remain with their first employer for 5 years. So as much as we hear stories about young graduates just wanting to leave, that's actually not the case. They don't. However, if they find out that their colleagues and friends from university are getting better development opportunities, better salaries, et cetera, they will move. And the factors that will become important to them as they enter the world of work has very much to do with it's time to show me, if I perform, how well I'm doing. So I expect to be promoted, they don't expect to do nothing and be promoted. They want to say, if I show up, I want to be told how wonderful I am by promoting me, by giving me some extra money, and don't forget to tell all my friends as well, because it's very important. So that's the kind of research that we do. Thank you very much for your attention. As I said, our work is really about trying to help companies make informed decisions so that if they are spending, 13% of our members are spending R1 million or more just in the attraction process. We want to make sure that they spend that money in an informed way, in a way that is useful to them, in a way that they can actually get the best value for their money. So thank you very much.